Hey guys, OG here, bringing you guys our next Twitter discussion video. Today we have a pretty fun one. We've reached sort of the end of a generation in Generation 8. Some of us just started playing Draft League this most recent generation, some of us within the last month, and some of us have been playing as long as Generation 6 when the format was, first created. I myself started playing in Gen 7. And I think it's cool to kind of see how our preferences and tastes kind of develop over the course of us playing game after game after game, week after week. So today's Draft League Twitter question is going to be: what is your favorite Draft League Pokemon of each type? I have a fun little graphic right here, so you can see my favorite Pokemon in each of these. I think they should be all pretty self-explanatory. I've talked about a million times, and this video isn't about me; it's about you. So I'm going to be going ahead and looking at all of your guys' favorite Draft League Pokemon and kind of giving my thoughts, and hopefully we'll see some cool ones. It'll be cool to see what your guys' favorites are, and we have some really cool entries this time, so I'm definitely really excited for this one. If you guys do enjoy today's Twitter discussion video, be sure to drop a like as well as sub to the channel. We're on our way to 2,000 subs, and I'd really appreciate if it helps us out in reaching that goal, as well as if you want to go ahead and enter our Scarlet and Violet giveaway. Or giving away a copy of each of one of the games. Go ahead and comment on this video, as well as sub to the channel. I believe it was a couple videos ago where we started this giveaway, and going forward all the way up until Scarlet and Violet drop, I will be randomly selecting a comment and a subscriber from a video for each of the copies, and yeah, it'll be a good time. Get your game for free potentially. But yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into it. I don't think I have anything too crazy on my list. Like I said, again, we're not going to focus on mine. I think that maybe the most interesting picks I have in mind is Licky. You all know my Licky obsession. And Mega T-Tar, and then really that's about it. I feel like everything is pretty darn standard. Maybe Saizuto is my favorite water, but I just draft it so often, I feel like it's so reliable. Okay, that being said, when we look at these lists, I'm not going to look and be like, wow, Mega Galade's your favorite fighting type? That's crazy. What a crazy pick. Because we know it's good and why it's good. I kind of want to look at your guys' more interesting picks. We're going to show off everybody's list. So if you did submit, you can see your team, or your set of 16 or 18, however many types there are, Pokemon. But I'm not going to in-depth look at all of them. First up, we have Oboe, and I know Oboe has been playing the draft format for a long time. I think earlier than me, and to be completely honest. So he definitely has his experience in the format. We could see his favorite list right here. As for the interesting picks, we see a Regieleki, which really does make me upset, and I'm not very happy about that, because I think that is a bottom 3 Pokemon ever. It is really not one of my favorites, but I see why some people like it. I get the idea of it forcing prep, yada yada yada, whatever it may be. But yeah. He says also a regular T-Tar, not Mega, or Mega T-Tar, not regular, which I think is a cool pick. It's my personal pick for Rock. I think that thing is absolute slept on beast. I think we see it a couple times on this list, which is pretty cool. Other than that, some interesting picks. We see Mega Altaria for the Dragon type, which I think that's an incredibly versatile Pokemon in the right hands, whether it be DD, Agility Special, Cotton Guard variants, or even just fat, toxicking, keel belling, defogging variants, things like that. It's very bulky, and Dragon Fairy is an incredible type, so that's a pretty cool pick. And then Poison and Skuntank, it's one of those old reliable picks, I suppose, where he probably ends up drafting it as his ground and poison a lot, so he's developed a pretty solid attachment to it. And then we have another interesting pick in Grass and Serena, which is, again, personally not my favorite Pokemon. I always end up drafting it, and then I always end up getting 2-hit KO by the Earthquakes coming my way. So I always usually prefer my Grass type to switch into ground types a little bit better than Serena does. But I will say, I think Serena has great offensive, utility as well. Especially with the rapid spin speed of this generation. So, pretty cool list by Oboe here. Then we can move on to Eiger in his list, where we see a lot of pretty interesting Pokemon. I'm going to be drinking water throughout this. It'll stop me from yawning, so it's either yawning or drinking water. Maybe a little bit of both. We have some really interesting picks here. So we're going to kind of touch on all of them. First off, we have Grass and Shaman. I think Shaman is the Pokemon that gets a bad rep from a lot of people, maybe mostly on the Showdown community. I haven't really seen anybody be upset with Shaman in Wi-Fi. Probably because it hasn't been in Wi-Fi for a while. But I really like it, honestly. And especially if it keeps the buffs it got in PLA and Recover and Sleep Pattern, it'll be phenomenal. But even without that, Seed Flare plus Earth Power and Dazzling Gleam Air Slash is really, honestly, very solid coverage when you take into account the fact that you're pretty much always getting -2 SPDF on whatever switches in. It really allows this thing to break down a lot of teams with little to no investment. And then sometimes there's a matchup where a Life Orb Shaman can just go crazy with its coverage. It's very naturally bulky. It's a great ground resist. It's a great status absorber with natural cure as well. It gets a great utility move in Healing Wish. I think it's a great Pokemon. Another interesting pick we have here is Volcanion, which is a Pokemon I typically don't see drafted very often, so it's pretty cool to see it on a list like this. I don't have too much experience with it, personally, because I feel like it's very hard to fit on a team as a water type. But if you have the extra slot and you have another bulky water, it looks like it could be a lot of fun. We see Beware Normal, which is a phenomenal Pokemon. I love me some Beware. I think that Pokemon is very good. It's incredibly strong physically, defensively, and physically offensively, to be completely honest. So, it's honestly really solid. It's a great low tier mon, and it checks a lot of top tier physical threats phenomenally with Fluffy plus its Fizz Def, and then solid natural attacking stats. And then we see a Mega Heracross, which I think someone else has on this list, which is really cool. I'll touch on it really quick. I used it in the Hoenn Classic, which was a league ran by my buddy Kaz. I drafted an Oras, and it was really fun, man. I was very pleasantly... Well, I wasn't even surprised. I'd been wanting to use Mega Heracross myself for a long time, and I hadn't got the opportunity to. So much so that I considered round 2 picking it in that league, but I ended up getting like Lando T, Latias, and Heracross. And it ended up being so much fun the few games I got to try it there. It just doesn't have switch-ins, and it doesn't die to any one hit. It's very annoying to deal with. It's just a great Pokemon overall. So I would definitely recommend giving it a shot in your next league. But yeah, other than that, pretty simple. This next one, we have Team Nacho. I haven't seen him play draft in a while, and he says maybe we want to start doing draft again. We would love to have you back, man. I liked your content a lot, actually, when you were making it early gen. But pretty interesting list here. Now, I don't know if these are like just his favorite Pokemon, and some of them are draft related. You know, I'm going to assume things like Pignite, Croconaw, Sentret, Bulbasaur are all going to be like, you know, favorite Pokemon of his because they're cute, and that's fair. Otherwise, though, you can kind of talk about some of the other slept-on threats if you wanted to, you know, have them be as his favorite, you know, grass type, for example, and Decidueye. Again, I'm a big Decidueye stan. I love it, whether it be momentum grabbing, as a defogger, as a ground resist, as a sword dance or nasty plot threat. If your league allows baton passing non-speed, it's great at passing swords dances and nasty plots and things like that. It's a great utility mod. It's a great blanket check to a lot of offensive threats as well. Despite its middling bulk, that recovery really does help it a lot. And when it's aptly invested, it's pretty solid. So I like it a lot. It's a good one. Alolan Golem. You guys know my Alolan Golem love. I tried to shoehorn on every build in PGP this last season, and it was really fun. I've drafted it before. I've trapped a few Celesteela in my day. And he just awesome. He just honestly has an awesome design. I love his mustache, man. He's such a cool guy. So I'm super here for that pick. I love it. Surfetch's fighting is very interesting. I think Surfetch has a lot of potential, and it's very strong, all like Galarian, Farfetch'd, and Little Cup is. The only thing that really just holds it back is its really bad speed tier. I wish it had a little bit better of a speed tier, but other than that, it's pretty strong, so I could see in niche matchups it could be pretty strong as a breaker, and I think Kurt really enjoyed it when he used it, so it's pretty cool. Other than that, anything crazy? We see Umbreon, which... You guys know my thoughts on Umbreon. I think it's very passive and bad. I think it's very exploitable in a counter team format. We see Sinistea as the ghost type, which is interesting. I feel like there's matchups where Sinistea just has like no counterplay if it has something to break through the dark. Like if you play like dark type Crocodile, it's very tough to deal with Sinistea, to be completely honest. It can just steamroll a ton of teams. So that's very interesting for sure. It's a Pokemon I never tried this whole generation, but I think it could be fun if you do have like the random points values for it. Abomasnow is a Pokemon I think has incredible value in low tiers, offensively, not defensively. Defensively, it's terrible, but there's going to be one or two Abomasnow matchups where it just clicks Blizzard and Leaf Storm and Giga Drain and Woodhammer and Earth Power and Focus Blast and all that fun stuff. You click the right button, you're going to do damage. It has Ice Shard as well for priority. And like it plus like Arctozolt is always a fun way to add like another dimension to your team in the lower tiers for just barely any points. So I like Abomasnow. I drafted it a few times and I love it. D-Knight's great. Grimmsnarl's an interesting one. I'm not the biggest on that Pokemon, but you know, each their own. Next up we have Chris, the Hawaiian Shaman. Does he have Shaman as grass? Come on, dude. We were just hyping up Shaman. We have Roserade, which in my opinion had a bit of a fall from grace in Generation 8, just losing a lot of its offensive capabilities due to the loss of Hidden Power and Technician not being as useful anymore, and Steel type's absolutely stuffing it now. But it's not a bad Pokemon. It's a good Spiker. I also don't think Spikes are as good this generation too. So, you know, that's that. We have a normal type Miltank. which is definitely interesting. I don't think Melting is bad. I think its bulk can be kind of a letdown at times because often, personally, when I've used Miltank, I've wanted to run very fast Miltanks because I think part of the value of Miltank is the bulk that you get with the speed 2 that you get, in the sense that it's not slow, passive, taunt fodder, and it can be very fast with the base 100 speed while still chewing hits, but a lot of times it feels like you're stuck in that awkward middle ground where you're too fast to take the hits you want to take, or you're too slow and you get overwhelmed by, you know, nice and strong breakers. So I think that sometimes Miltank can kind of fall in that awkward space there, and it can be a bit passive offensively and not be very strong, unfortunately. So it can be exploited in that way. We have a Blaziken there, which I am a big Blaziken guy, even not Speed Boost, because Speed Boost shouldn't be allowed, by the way. If your league allows Speed Boost, Blaziken, find a new league. It's always been my motto. Speed Boost is absolutely brain dead broken, but Blaze is really good as well. I think Kurt's used it well since he's had it in CGT. I used it really good in the ICP like a year or two ago when I drafted it last, and it's a really fun Pokemon. I love Mixed Life Orb Blaziken. I think it's great. It's a great scarf for this gen with U-turn close combat as additions to its move pool and things like that as well. So pretty cool stuff. Mega Arrow as a flying is a good pick. That's a good mon, baby. I love me some Mega Arrow. It is so hard to switch into Dual Wing Beat plus Stone Edge or Rock Slide plus what do you call it? EQ, all the Fang moves, Aqua Tail, Earthquake. I think I already said Earthquake. It gets DD and Home Claws to set up. It's a very fast defog. It's a very fast taunter. It's very bulky in a lot of matchups because you can afford to go so darn bulky in a lot of matchups. So I think it's an incredible Pokemon, and I really like it. I think it's a really slept on pick here by Chris here, and I wish more people would give Mega Arrow a shot. It was very close to being on my list, and when I did this at the end of Generation 7, it was on my list as my rock type, actually. But yeah, it's a great mom. Next up, we have Thriller. I'm gonna have to like click on his because it was being a little bit weird. I'll read them off for you really quick. Actually, I can go. Ooh. Let's go right there. So it's gonna be a little bit awkward when we first click on here. There, perfect. You have Mega Venu, which is definitely an interesting pick. It can be very bulky and solid on some teams, but I do feel like it's, I don't know, I feel like a lot of Megas are personally better, in my opinion, in the sense that, like, I get more value out of them, and they're just stronger Pokemon. But Venu is still very bulky and can be very strong offensively. And that we have Jolteon, which, you gotta be a very good electric type for me to think you're a good Pokemon, and Jolteon is not a good one. I hate Jolteon, I think it's terrible. Reuniclus, that's a base pick though. I love offensive Trick Room Reuni with Life Orb, or just like Life Orb 3 attacks recover Reuni is a great set. I love AV Reuni. I love the Double Dance or the Calm Mind variants with a Resist Berry or Weakness Policy or whatever it might be. It's a great Pokemon. I really need to draft it more because it's a Pokemon I always see success with when I do draft it. Staraptor for flying is definitely really interesting. It's a Pokemon that I feel like whenever I can fit it onto a team, it does really well, and there's matchups where Staraptor just comes in and clicks Double Edge and Brave Bird, and a potential close combat every once in a while, and it just nukes things. But it is a Pokemon that's very hard to fit onto teams. We've Toxtricity as Poison, which is an interesting Pokemon. It's very strong, but it's very hard to position offensively due to its speed tier and its want of being specs to really have that power that you're looking for. Articuno and Stakataka just aren't very good Pokemon in my opinion. I know a lot of people are really big on Articuno. I really don't like it. It's very passive and not strong, and it's a nice type. So it's a fat, slower, more defensive oriented ice type, which isn't as good in my opinion. Okay, next up we have Anthony here, or Spartan275. His picks, we have Lurantis and Grass, which is definitely a pretty interesting sleeper pick right here. Obviously having access to Contrary, Leaf, Storm, and Superpower, which is definitely pretty interesting, and if you don't prep for it, it can put in a lot of work. You can also defog. It's very solid with an Assault Vest in my opinion as well. But sometimes, and most of the time, it really feels like its stats let it down, even when it starts boosting up to pretty obscene levels. It's still a Lurantis at the end of the day, unfortunately, so not too big on that one. Lantern is a great budget water, so I can totally feel that. I love drafting Lantern. It's a great pivot. It just volts in and out. It can Rest Talk and can be AV. It can even be Scarf, as it is the best Scarfer in the game. So that's definitely pretty interesting. Starmie is really cool as a Psychic type, which is, or just Starmie in general, not even that it's there as the Psychic type. It's a really strong Pokemon offensively, and it has matchups where it's very annoying defensively with its speed tier and recover and Thunder Wave and things like that. There's just a lot of matchups where Starmie being your bulky water kind of shows. And that can be tough. I like drafting double water when I have Starmie personally, just because of the fact that I want to use Starmie more offensively a lot of weeks, use it as that spinner, use it as that status absorb with Nat Gear, or just like Life Orb Analytic Hydro Pump to it killing everything in the game. So yeah, I think Starmie's a cool Pokemon, but it's definitely an interesting pick right here. Rhyperior's ground, amazing Pokemon. I absolutely love Solid Rock as an ability in a generation without hidden powers and its typing. It's great. It's a reliable rocker. It's incredibly strong. And it is just the king of setting up weakness policy, rock polish, Mickey games, and things like that because of the Solid Rock. So that's obviously pretty cool. We have Frostlass as Ghost, which is a great spiker. We have Muck as Dark, which is definitely interesting in a Gen 8 format. In Gen 7, it might have even been there for me personally. Gen 7 Muck was a different demon. Let me tell you, you young bucks, how good Gen 7 Alolan Muck was. Gen 8, it kind of had a fall from grace, obviously, and it's only on Nat Dex formats because it's not in the Gallery Dex, but it is a very solid Pokemon still with an AV, or even with those berry sets or Rest Talk sets and things like that. Poison Touch is a great ability on top of the Gluttony that it has for those super berries and things like that. Aurorus, my buddy Nathan's favorite Pokemon is Aurorus, or like his second or third favorite Pokemon, so that's cool, but it's not a very good Pokemon, unfortunately, in my opinion. Very bad defensive typing. There's a lot of better Hail Setters that you can get, so personally I would never draft it. And then Steelix is the king of value as a Steel type. I will draft this thing 10 out of 10 times if people allow me to. It's just such a reliable Pokemon for such a solid price point, and it checks a lot of top tier things that you really need it to, so that's great. Comfy as a fairy is very interesting. It's a Pokemon that, again, has some pretty solid win-con matches with, like, Calm Mind, Draining Kiss, Stored Power, Giga Drain, shenanigans. But as a defensive fairy, sometimes it is a little bit lacking when it comes to taking hits and switching into things, so that's something to keep in mind. And then we have Noivern or Dragon, which is a very solid value Pokemon. Stop drinking water. Maybe it's because it's almost gone. But Noivern is a very solid Pokemon when it comes to value and frisking opponents, Infiltrator, having great offensive coverage, things like that. So I'm definitely big on Noivern. It's a good Pokemon. Next up we have Marcus, and Marcus's list is very interesting. We have Venu here, regular Venu, not Mega, assuming that he means it's from a Sun perspective, and I think Marcus used like triple weather teams in his EWT run where they had a triple draft format, and he probably enjoyed it there. I don't know if he's drafted it otherwise, but it's a great Pokemon. Offensively under the sun, it is very tough to deal with the growth boosted Venu. Because there's a lot of times where like you'll be prepping for like Weather Ball / Earth Power as the coverage move, and then it'll bust out an Earthquake for your Glow King, or it'll just, which is on his list, or it'll bust out a +2 knockoff instead, and things like that. So Venu can do some scary things, or you can just drop like Life Orb, Leaf Storms, and things like that, and really break for itself to put in some work a little bit later. So I like that. Water Quillfish as a very reliable spiker and low tier pivot, great with the Rocky Helmet, spreads Thunder Waves and Scald Burns, can be passive at times, but gets great utility out of itself. We have Porygon Z, which is a breaker incarnate. Very fun Pokemon if you can fit it on. Electric is Vikavolt, which is some Matt O'Shea shit. We love it. Some Aquaberry shenanigans is what I'm assuming, which is cool. Relicanth is his favorite rocket. I'm pretty sure that's his favorite Pokemon in general. So shouts to Marcus. I don't know if I think Relicanth is good though, unfortunately. Megatrump as ground is a phenomenal pick. Megatrump is so much fun this generation. Megatromp's biggest issue in prior gens was the fact that it was slower than regular Garchomp, and that drop in speed really hurt it. There were a lot of things that could now outpace it. It didn't outpace Garchomp, but now with the addition of Scale Shot, Sword Stand's boosted Scale Shot is one, going to rip through something because you are a mega freaking Garchomp, and two, is going to give you that speed boost that you really require to end games on your own. This plus like Sand is also just impossible to switch into. Those Earthquake, Scale Shot, and like Stone Edge, it's just impossible to deal with. So I think Megachomp is an amazing Pokemon. And there's been times where I've contemplated drafting it over regular Garchomp just because it's that good. And I still think regular Garchomp's better just due to the item diversity that it can have and the better speed tier at all times. But again, it's a very good Pokemon. Scrafty and Dark, another base pick. We love our low tier value Scrafty. It's a phenomenal Pokemon. Ghost and Delmise, I think we already talked about that. I'm pretty sure, right? No, might have been another video I recorded tonight, but I did record another video before this. Oops. But Delmice is, again, a very solid Pokemon. Vascos is a pretty cool typing. Rapid Spin for hazard control. Very strong stab options. Really 3 stabs with Anchor Shot and Steel Worker, which is awesome. It can be banded. It can be fat and defensive and synth up. It's a pretty cool mon. Druddigon is great low tier value. Magnezone is an interesting pick in Gen 8, but if he's drafting things that really don't appreciate steals, it can at least force some prep in that regards, and you could do some fun things with Magnezone, and even analytic boosted attacks are going to be very strong if you can position it correctly. And Ozu is a pretty cool pick as well for some good value. Okay, let's see how many more we have, because we're on Trexo right now. Where am I at? Oh my goodness. How many do I have? How many do... what? Oh, this is gonna be a long video. Oh, this is gonna be a long video. Oh my gosh, I'm still scrolling. I'm already 21 minutes deep. Okay, we are only going to talk about the cool Pokemon now. I'm going a little bit too slow, and I'm realizing that, and I'm kind of sleepy, and I'm gonna wake up early for the Packer game tomorrow. I'm trying to get this guys up. I'm trying to get this up for you guys. So, Trevenant for Trexo is a very interesting pick. Personally not a big fan, but it definitely has some fun utility, Trick Room, Harvest stuff. It can be pretty funny. I've seen like Starfberry pop off against people. I think Delphox is a very underutilized Pokemon in the draft format in general, whether it be fat wish sets or even just offensive variants, flame charge variants, calm mind variants, things like that. Which is awesome. Bouffant's another really slept on Pokemon. He has a lot of slept on Pokemon. Of course, when I say I want to go faster, he has like all mono tier 4 and below. Thanks, Trexo. But Bouffant's a great Pokemon. Very strong offensively. It's okay with an AV. I think with wish support, it can function as a very solid budget normal. Ronfan is another Pokemon that gets a bad rep due to its useless ability, but Electric Flying is still Zapdos typing, and it volts around and defogs away hazards and nasty plots and does a bunch of things like that. So pretty cool. Grapploct is a Pokemon I really don't have too much experience with, as I feel there are a million better fighting types to typically draft. I think he looks really cool, and I wish he offered a little bit more to differentiate himself and make himself have a little bit more of a concrete niche than other fighting types. Ground type and Palossand, which is definitely interesting. Low tier ground, but it is very bulky, reliable recovery, good rocker, decent Pokemon. Leavanny was a Pokemon I feel like early in my draft career I would always try and shoehorn onto teams because I really liked webs, and as most new players do, they draft scary offense with webs and hope for the best, and I did that a lot with Leavanny. Again, I'm not the biggest on it anymore, but I understand the value in having a very fast web setter like Leavanny, and it can very reliably get them up in many games. We have Walrein as our ice type. My buddy Nathan, again, second shout out to Nathan in this video, but he got, what do you call it? He got, what do you call it? Like MVP damn near with Walrein. He like won Uber's League and it came to every game and it just popped. So it has to be good if Nathan was doing that. So I got distracted by the Mila Kunis got booed at Jimmy Kibble's audience multiple times and handled it perfectly. I was like, damn, why'd she get booed? I like Mila Kunis. Anyways, we have Mega Aggron too, another very slept on mon. Well, it's not even really slept on, but I think like a lot of people don't like see it as their favorite steel type, but it's so damn reliable, and getting access to body press this gen was just phenomenal for it. Basically giving it another stab with how much damage it does off of that ridiculous defense stat. And then Applin is obviously broken, but I said I wasn't on top of the broken Pokemon. What am I doing right now? Okay, we have double AG here, which I have to mention here from Aquarius, which just AG is that good, right? But funny Pokemon regardless. We see base Mega Heracross, so that was the other Mega Heracross I remember seeing when I was getting these tweets. Whimsicott, good utility as a Grass, Leech, Encore, Defog, U-Turn, all that fun stuff, I'm sure Dr. Slacken could explain to you why it's broken more than I can. Azelf is an awesome pick to see in Psychic. It is one of my personal favorite Pokemon. I think it's in my top 10 kill leaders. I think it's incredible. It's very fun to use, and it's really versatile, and I think if people get more creative with Azelf, they'll see the value that it offers over kind of defaulting to the cheaper and more defensive Mesprit and Oxys. But yeah, I think they're both great. That is where my kudos end, though, because I do hate not hate Diggersby. I hate Weezing. I think Weezing is terrible. I think it's not bulky. I think it's passive. I think it just gets exploited and overwhelmed very easy. Every time I've drafted it, it's incredibly subpar. Remember when I said you need to go fast, and then Amos comes up, and it's gonna be all crackhead mods. Serp, I think like Serp still has some pretty good value this generation, despite it losing Kid and Power, but it's a very solid Pokemon nonetheless. Entei surprised me a lot this BBL season when I used it. Mega Blastoise, incredible Pokemon. I think this generation is super slept on, and now even this is considering no Shell Smash, because again, your league allows Shell Smash Mega Blastoise. You're not playing Ubers, find a different league. But regardless, it's a very good Pokemon. I really like Blastoise a lot. Rapid Spin buff, this gem was great. Flip Turn, it's ridiculously strong offensively. Dio Defense is what he meant to put here, but it didn't give the option. It's also a Pokemon that I think it shit on too much. But it's very solid defensively. And Stallbreaker DOD's a demon. And of course, we have a bunch of Amo Crackhead picks. Spectre is not my favorite Pokemon, but I've made that abundantly clear. I feel like I don't have to explain that one. And Big Ice Cube, who's obviously broken. But yeah, next up we have Lars. We have Aloe and Water, which is definitely interesting. I'm not a big Aloe fan. I think that it is, again, very passive and just not very good. I used it in the Home Classic and it did do its job for me somewhat, but again, at the end of the day, I do feel as if it's very passive and exploitable, and I couldn't bring it to all of my games because of that fact. Moltres, a great Pokemon. Love that guy to death. We see another base Mega T-Tar, which we love to see. Mega Glalie is also awesome to see. I think this Pokemon is super slept on. In this generation in particular, I feel like I did not see it at all drafted. Whereas last gen, it would, in Gen 7, I would see it picked up every once in a while. And see it used to good effect. Maybe it's a loss of return, but you still have Body Slam to bait pairs, as well as Facade when you get burned. Or Double Edge for a nuke, and Explosion for a nuke, and Spikes and Earthquake, and Freeze Dry to hit bulky waters, and Ice Shard and things like that. It's a really fun mon, honestly. Especially if you have a team that pressures other steel types, or has a team that appreciates the pressuring of steel types, because it's really the only thing that switches into Mega Glalie super reliably. Sorry. Alrighty, next up we have Sandy Simmies, or B-Movie in Braille. Pretty base there. Oh, I forgot I can't click her. It makes it too big. First off, I have to mention, we have our first Licky. That wasn't me. So thank you so much. Great choice. Good stuff. Yeah, we love us some Licky on the channel. Again, I don't gotta explain why. But we have some other pretty interesting picks in Suicune, which general consensus to a lot of people has been that it's fallen off this generation in its viability, but I still think Suicune's amazing. We have things like Alakazam, which is a Pokemon I really want to try myself. I have never gotten the opportunity to fit it onto a team, and I typically lean to get Azelf instead because I think it's better in a draft format, but I think Zam could be great. Gigalith is a rock type, with Excadrill down there as a steel. It tells me that sand is a mainstay for Sandy here. Then we have Big Base Stunfisk, so anti-meta, very good Pokemon. Muck, which is a very interesting one. I don't know if I've ever played a Muck in Draft League, so I would love to see some replays of Muck popping off. I played a Alolan Muck, obviously, but not regular. Ursula is such a cool Pokemon, but it's so bad, unfortunately. And then we have Big Lapras here, which is definitely a pretty interesting one. I have drafted Lapras once myself, early Galar decks, but it obviously wasn't that good. Okay. Next up, we can jump into Bepsis here, and of course, we have Big Type Null here at normal. I don't think I expect anything else. I think Bepsis is the person I've seen use Type Null the best so far. Maybe I'm tripping. Other than that, though, I think the only other like super interesting one we have is going to be, or that we haven't talked about with other people, is going to be Grand Bull in Fairy, which is a very solid Pokemon. I think especially for its price point. But I feel like it's very liable to get overwhelmed just due to its lack of recovery and mediocre bulk test. But Intim on your Fairy and having a more physically defensive oriented Fairy can be very valuable a lot of times, and it's a great soft check to a lot of physically offensive fighting types and things like that. So, and it's good offensive coverage too. It's very strong as well, so it's definitely not passive. And it gets cool things like Heal Bell, and it's great with an AV. So, yeah, it's a good sponge, and I think with proper wish support on your normal or something like that, Granbull could put in some work, despite it not being the bulkiest thing in the world. Okay, so next up we have Matrix, who did a regular list and an LC list, and we kind of talk about these. I'm pretty sure we've touched on all of these guys, besides Mega Houndoom, which is a Pokemon I always give a lot of shit, but like, I've never personally tried it. It has to go through the OG Albina test, before I really give it, a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But personally, I'm not big on it as of right now. Registeel is a Pokemon. It's one of the few passive Pokemon I feel like I can use well. It's just so damn bulky, especially for a Steel type. Having a Pokemon that bulky is just, on top of that defensive typing of pure Steel, is just, it's a godsend. And then we have Fairy, Alolan Ninetales, which is a Pokemon I'm definitely not a big fan of personally. I think it's very passive. I think screens are very easy to prep around. I don't know. It's not for me. And I think it's very one-dimensional. Next up, though, we have LC, and we'll go over any, like, crazy picks. Oh, we'll kind of, like, look at all of them. Bulbasaur, great. Vulpix, great. Dewpider, great. Zigzagoon is great value. Chinchou, great. Then we have Esper, which isn't a Pokemon I'm super fond of. I think it not being able to hit dark types outside of Play Rough is pretty whack. Like the fact that it doesn't get Gleam. And it's not the strongest, it's not the fastest, so and it's also not the bulkiest, so it kind of lacks there. Mienfoo, obviously broken. Nosepass, great. Sandshrew, great. Rufflet, broken. Cutie, great. Coughing, great. Purloin, great. Shuppet, I do have some respect for Shuppet after a mock I was running with Jason a couple weeks ago for Clash, where he was just getting absolutely demolished by offensive Shuppet plus webs for it to spin block, which was really cool to see. Honestly, I never thought Shuppet would put in so much work, but it definitely did in those mocks, which is pretty cool. Snover, great. Sandshrew, great. Jingmo is okay, and Azurill is definitely interesting as your fairy type. Okay, next up we have Razor Claw here. I'm sure we're gonna have some interesting Pokemon. Golisopod, I think someone else might have had this Pokemon. I don't know. Or it might have been the other video I was recording today. But Golisopod in general, if I haven't talked about it, I think it's a lot more viable with boots. It's very strong, good spiker, nice mon. Heliolisk is a good pivot. I like AV Heliolisk a lot. Takes a lot of strong offensive waters very, very well. Grabs good momentum with Volt Switch and U-turn, has a way of hitting grounds. What's not to like? Passimian, good low tier value, fighting type. Runerigus, same thing. Not the best ground in the world, but really not that bad at all either. Durant is very hard to switch into. Sharpedo is a Pokemon I really want to try. Sharpedo and Mega Sharpedo are two Pokemon I really want to try myself. Bisharp is definitely an interesting pick. It's not a very good bulky Steel, but offensively I think it's very good. Dragalge is a kind of the well, no, it's very good defensively, especially with an AV and it's fat Spadef set, but also Dragon Poison with adaptability is really tough to switch into on a consistent basis. Like, Dragalge does a lot of damage, so it's a pretty solid Pokemon. Next up, we have Mr. Badass Frostlass here with the Thwackey as his grass, not Rillaboom, Thwackey. So he just really enjoys the value you get out of Thwackey, which it does offer very solid value. There are things like Moltres, Wigglytuff, which is incredibly interesting. I'm not personally not a big Wiggly guy, but it has great Gem 1 coverage, and it's a solid Dragapult check, which is always good to have out of your normal. Your normal not losing to Dragapult is pretty nice, obviously. Then we have Flygon, which I think gets a little bit too mid-shade. I think people either really like Flygon or think it's absolutely terrible. I'm one of the people that personally really likes it, but that's just me. Then other than that, we have Cryo and Ice, which is a Pokemon I'm not a big fan of. It seems it's very physically frail, obviously as an Ice type. It's got decent Spadef and can spin and defog, which is a very unique tool set for it to have. But I also don't like its passivity against, obviously, opposing Steel types and things like that. Then Zydog is another fun mon. A little bit more offensive than Zygarde. I like playing Zygarde much more defensively. But there are matches where Banded Arrows and E-Speed and stuff like that can put in a lot of work. Okay. So next we have Kurt. Let's see if Kurt has anything crazy. He has Crustle and Rock, but we might have already talked about it. Other than that, Kurt's kind of got a basic bitch list. Buzzle is pretty cool as the bug type. But I also feel like unless you have Scizor or Mega Scizor in your bug type, most bug types are pretty going to be like a little bit more out there. I don't know. Other than that, though, I think this is pretty standard. These are all mons that Kurt has performed very well with over the course of the generation as well, and they're all very good Pokemon. I don't really have too much to add for that one. Now, this one's going to be funny because John, this looks like just like one of John's draft league teams if he was allowed to get 18 Pokemon. This dude drafts, love John to death, by the way, but he drafts these same things over and over and over again. So I've seen him draft these things all the time. We'll talk about him though. Torterra, Great value as a ground, in my opinion, as a low tier ground. Anti-Magic's a lot of things, very good physically, defensively, and offensively, which is pretty cool. Mega Pidgeot is another great Pokemon, I think. It's very tough to switch into Hurricanes that can't miss, as well as Heat Waves and things like that. I think if it got reliable Normal Stab and like Focus Blast, it would be a ridiculous Pokemon. And then we have Machamp, which is probably the last like really weird one that we haven't talked about with anybody else yet. Which I think John used like PLA moves at Machamp, which got Drain Punch and Mach Punch. And I think if it got those things, it's incredible value. And this is it's still worse than Conk, but it's a little bit faster and it has its own niche and it's, you know, cheaper. Without it, I'm not big on Machamp, but I also use PLA moveset Machamp in BBT, which is the BBL's tour that they run every year, and I liked it there a lot too. So if that's the Machamp we're getting, I'm here for that one. Okay, next up we got Jerome here, or Baton Mash, or BM. Is that BM? Oh, cool. We have his favorite draft league of each, mon of each type here. Something like Blacephalon is very, very interesting to see. I've enjoyed it in CGT thus far, but it's a Pokemon I don't see drafted too often. We already talked about Volcanion. I love Thundee T. I think it's very slept on. Slowbro Galar is another one I think that is pretty darn slept on and should be explored a little bit more, at least in the Wi-Fi scene. I feel like I never see it drafted or even used well. But in theory, it should be pretty comparable to the other three, but it seems like it's always a pretty far step below the other ones. So I would like to see it, you know, experimented with a little bit more. Komodo is a Pokemon that I personally love. I love the versatility of it offensively and defensively. And then we have cool things like Sneasel and Ice, which is definitely very interesting. And then Hoopa Confined Ghost is another Pokemon I really want to try. I used Hoopa Unbound recently within the last year, and I really like that Pokemon. I think Hoopa Ghost, or like Hoopa Confined, could be a lot of fun if positioned well offensively. Okay, next up we have Jetman here with a pretty base list. Electric Galvantula is definitely an interesting one. It's not a bad Pokemon, but I actually like it more so offensively than I do for its web aspect, because I'm not a big webs guy. Corselia I think is dog water, just because it's very passive. Sock is definitely an interesting pick. Heavy Duty Boots plus Sturdy, as well as Moldbreaker are really cool options. Regirock's a very reliable rocker. I love drafting Regirock as a low tier rocker, as well as Flying Resist. Araquanid, another bug type web setter, but it's solid offensively and defensively as well. And then something like Dusknoir, which isn't very good, unfortunately. Then we have Vivid. Vivid's list, let's see, anything crazy that we haven't talked about yet. Silvally is a pretty cool one. Jack of all trades. I think offensively Silvally is a lot better this generation with the buff of multi-attack. Like SD Flame Charge sets are very, very good this generation. And its, you know, ability to kind of blanket check anything that your team struggles with defensively is very valuable in a lot of matchups. Other than that, we have Sandaconda, which I'm not big on. I feel like I might have talked about this in another video, but it plays very passively and slowly and kind of relies on glare and rest cheese, which just isn't the way I like to approach things. Chandelure is fun offensively as well as the opposite game, but they don't have the best defensive utility, unfortunately. But, you know, they're definitely very solid Pokemon. Next up, we have the Roy Mustang himself from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, blessing us with his favorite draft league Pokemon. I don't know if there's anything here we haven't talked about other than obviously the Yveltal, which is it's okay. And then we have Jellicent, which is one of my personal favorite bulky waters, whether it be because of its speed tier and access to taunt. It's great bulk, its immunities that it offers. It's just a great Pokemon overall. And then Pangoro, which is a really solid low tier breaker. If you can position it in, Bandit is just impossible to switch into. So I think that's definitely fair. Pretty fun Pokemon to you know, use and see. Then we have our next here. Is it No or is it? I don't know. I don't know how to say the name. I'm sorry. I always feel bad when I don't know how to say the names. But that's okay. We're going to jump on to the next thing. We have anything interesting. Let's see. Hippowdon for ground is definitely interesting. I think I'm a firm believer that Hippowdon sand teams are bad, like Hippowdon Drill. But Hippowdon itself is a good Pokemon on like balance builds and just being a bulky nuisance. And Hippowdon Dracozolt is not bad at all. Other than that, though, I think it's pretty much other things we've talked about besides maybe Prim, which is a great Pokemon, whether it be as a decent bulky water, but especially a great breaker and a great fairy type. So, yeah, definitely a good one. Next up, we have Puffer plays here with some pretty base picks. We have Big Appleton, which I've actually enjoyed very much so in the CGT this season. Victini, which is a great Pokemon. P2, which isn't my favorite thing in the world just due to its knock liability and passivity and losing to the move taunt. but I can't deny its bulkiness and its annoyingness. And then we have some pretty cool picks at the bottom. First off, the one that I really like is Mega Steelix. I love Mega Steelix. I really want to try it out. I guess it's pretty aggressive to say I love it when I haven't used it myself, but I am going to try Mega Steelix eventually. I feel like it's very slept on. It gives you great value overall. And then things like Glaceon is very interesting. It's not the best Pokemon in the world, but I have seen some people put in work with it. I think Liv might have done well with it because she drafted it because it's like her favorite Mon. And then Amel's done well with it in BBLs last season. And then Goodra, which is a Pokemon that I'm famously kind of known. Well, not even really, actually. I feel like there's other Pokemon that I'm more known for not liking. But I'm not a big Goodra guy, personally. I think it really lacks that, like, pseudo status that every other pseudo legendary has. It's very underwhelming in a lot of matchups. It's a great special sponge, but I feel like AV is actually pretty lacking in the sense that it doesn't have reliable recovery, and really just hazards is all you need to kind of chip the thing down. Just rocks is more than enough in a lot of instances. I think a lot of times when Goodra's better, it's more offensive variants or like Rest Talk variants. But yeah. Then we have Soul Blaze here with another LC edition. We have Bellsprout Grass, which is really interesting because I'm pretty sure that Bulbasaur is superior in every way, but Bellsprout is really cool looking, so I will give him that. Darumaka is a little bit unreliable in my opinion, but it's still definitely a cool Pokemon. Carvana's great, Rufflet's great, Elekid's great. Elgyem is definitely an interesting Pokemon. I think it plays pretty slow and passively for the metagame, but there are matches where Elgyem can be very annoying, whether it be with like OTR sets or Calm Mind variants and things like that. Scrafty's broken. Dwebel's great, Diglett is great value, Wingle's great, the Dewpider's great, Venipede is a Pokemon I'm not super big on, Pawniard's great, Duskull is okay. I think it's a good disruptor and Thief Stings and just kind of annoying. Cupchew's pretty solid budget, actually. I like Cupchew a lot. And then Bronzor's a little bit passive, but not bad. Jangmo-'s meh. And Cutiefly is great. So, yeah. Next up, we have Calvin, or CG12. I read Calvin as the Twitter handle, but I'm pretty sure he just goes by CG12. But yeah, he has the Ferrothorn, which is, I think we've seen Ferrothorn actually, so we don't have to talk about that. Mesprit, which is great value. Love me some Mesprit, whether it be as a Rocker, Healing Wish, Scarfer, T-Waver, things like that. And then Tyrantrum is probably the other base pick here. I haven't seen Tyrantrum yet on any of these lists, and he didn't really mention like it was anything crazy. He said everything else was basic besides Comal and Mesprit. I think Mesprit is more basic than the Tyrantrum there, but I think offensively it's really cool. Rock Polish or just Scarf sets, Head Smashing, Dragon Dancing, and things like that, whether it be with what do you call it, Rockhead, or with Strong Jaw. It has some pretty strong coverage. It can close combat as well, which is a really cool tool for it. And yeah, just a pretty damn good Pokemon overall. But yeah, I agree. Nothing else is the Comal and the Mesprit is too out of the ordinary. Next up, we have Fizzle here. Saying this is mostly for Gen 7 before, because I didn't really play a lot of Gen 8 draft, which is pretty cool, because Fizzle was a pretty solid draft league player back in the day. Doesn't really play anymore. But it's cool to see like the perspective of someone who used to play back in the day and doesn't really partake in it anymore, and to see if they still kind of hold up. And really, it's pretty cool to see, because a Pokemon like Moltres was obviously worse in Gen 7 than it is now. Now it can just brain-dead slap on boots. We used to have to rapid spin defog for Moltres back in my day. So that's pretty interesting to see. Same thing with Slowking. Slowking wasn't teleporting around, so it's cool to see someone like really enjoy Slowking back in the day. Other than that, the only crazy things are probably Houndoom and Mimikyu, which we have talked about, but no, we've talked about Houndoom. We have not talked about Mimikyu, which I am not a fan of. I don't like it. It's weak, it's slow, it's frail, it sucks. I'm not a big Mimikyu guy, unfortunately. But the rest of the things definitely make sense. Next up is Bruno, and what another absolute goat with Licky here as his normal type. We love to see it. Other than that, any interesting picks? Crook is the dark type. I love Crook. Well, no, we already talked about Crook, I think. And then Mega Beedrill is the poison type. Mega Bee was actually a Pokemon that I used to kind of shit on, but then I, took the OG Albino test, I drafted it, and I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I had it with like Garchomp, Aegislash, and I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. And it's really fun to just kind of click U-turn and poison jab the whole game. Maybe knock off every once in a while, but really maybe drill run every once in a while. But really, you should draft a team that kind of functions better with Mega Beedrill's U-turns kind of getting in your other threats and things like that. It's kind of the way you're supposed to play it. But yeah, pretty solid stuff. Next up, we have Coral here. He said, from all the wings I've been in Gen 8. Let's see. Poison type sucks. I only bring them 2 games per. Ooh, hot take. I like poisons. But Victory Bell is pretty funny. That's definitely pretty cool. Again, Venusaur, but pretty cool stuff. Other than that, though, anything crazy? Kadabra is definitely a good low tier threat. And it looks like they've played in an NFE league, so that would make sense. I feel like Kadabra would be broken in NFE. Pyukumuku isn't very good in my opinion. I think it's very passive and exploitable. Girder is great low tier value. And in an NFE league, I'm sure it's probably very, very good. And then the ice cream, people love the ice cream. It just clicks Blizzard, no drawback pretty much, and that's always really valuable. And Hail plus Blizzard chips down its own checks very easy, so that's cool. All right, next up we have is it Sam Hater? I don't know. They want Kecleon on Pokemon Go in 2022, please, though. And they have some pretty interesting picks here. Oh, the 2 Tyrantrums. That's 2 Tyrantrums. Ditto, which is really interesting. I'm not a big Ditto guy, but I see the value and the appeal in grabbing a Ditto. Maybe if you just have extra points. Other than that, we have like Fortress, which I'm not big on. Crobat, which is a great mon. Corsola, which I'm not big on. Again, just due to its passivity. But yeah. Oh, and Kingdra for Dragon just shows me you probably like Draft and Rain. Yeah, we have a Pelipper for flying too. So, big Rain fan here, which definitely makes sense if we have Kingdra in our top tier, our favorite dragon, because it's not a Pokemon you're typically going to see outside of it. Next up is Jaybear, which is quite possibly the most Draft League player list of all time. I don't think there's anything cool on here, which is funny because Jaybear usually drafts like some dumb shit and like tries to make it work, like Indeedee, Volcanion, Barbaracle, like I said right here. I was like, where are they, man? I don't think there's anything too crazy on this list, though. Yeah. These are all good Pokemon. I agree. Okay. Next up, we have Choco Pokemon. All right. Next with Eternus, which is pretty okay. Brush Rim is all right, man. Snom, a little too broken, so we're not going to really talk about that. Arceus is tight. Damn, what league did you get to use these things in? Then we have Alcremie, which isn't a great Pokemon in my opinion, as well as the Rapidash. They're just very lackluster. I do love the Mega Ampharos pick, though. I think that mon is very fun, very underexplored in a lot of formats. Zoroark is okay for mind games, not the biggest on it in the world. We might have talked about that before, though. Just the other videos kind of blending together at this point. And Lycanroc Midday is definitely interesting as a rock type. Dusk is usually better in like every sense of the word. Especially because like you're not typically drafting Lycanroc Midday on sand. You're drafting an Excadrill or something like that. So definitely some interesting stuff. There's some cool mods on there. Okay, next up is Gentleman Thomas here with another. We got 3 Lickies, baby. Let's go. 3 Lickies that aren't me, by the way. That's 4 total Lickies. Baby. He got to use Naganadel in S2 League, so that's going to be there. Yeah, that mon's pretty good. I will give you that. That mon's pretty good. There's the Lycanroc Dust that we were talking about. Other than that, nothing too crazy. Poison Scolipede. I love me some Scully, whether it be SC variants or spiking Endeavor variants and things like that. But yeah, pretty simple list other than those. Registeel, which we might have talked about before. Then we have, only 2 more. Oh, thank goodness. I'm so ready to be done. We have Bionic Rocker here with a bunch of standard picks with a few dark horses. We talked about Obstagoon, which is their normal. Jirachi is a very solid bulky steel, as well as Psychic, Rocker, things like that. Love me some Earthshoot Rabbit, might be the first one we've seen of those. We've talked about these guys, but yeah, pretty standard, but there's definitely some cool mods. And again, that's our 3rd Tyrantrum, so there must be some secret sauce that I'm not sipping on, or using in my food, or dipping my fries in. To where everybody's drafting Tyrantrum and I'm not. So I'm going to have to pick it up soon. And then we have, of course, to end it all off, the Phil Nilsson with the best normal type in the format, Eradicate. Which is, of course, absolutely broken. And then we have cool picks as well, like Volbeat with like cool prankster shenanigans that can pull. Clefairy. But yeah, everything else is pretty standard or things we've talked about before. But yeah, that was a long video. I actually split it up into 3 parts because I was getting very tired and I needed a break-up recording session. So hopefully it's not too choppy. I'm not an editing master, and I'm definitely not sending this one off to Sunny. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you guys want to do your own pictures, I will leave the link in the description below. Or if you want to type out what your favorite of each type is too, I would love to see yours in the comments. And let me know what you think about some of the Pokemon we talked about today. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.